G'day golfers. Ever found yourself redirecting blame and making excuses after having an absolute shocker on a golf course? I know that I have. Range was closed, I was a little cold, didn't warm up, I hit it in those 3 old divots. Then we have the podcast for you. We focus on how to fundamentally own your swing. Strike it pure and consistently shoot in the 70s. Be it if you're a weekend hack, retired and playing daily, a school phenom or a tour professional. We present and discuss facts and physics pertaining to golf, trying to keep our ego and opinion at bay. We dispel myths such as keep your head down, bend your knees, or my all-time favourite, game improvement irons. So stop drinking that mythical Kool-Aid and have a sip of ours. I think you'll find it both inspiring and refreshing. I'm Scott Young, founder of Swing, PGA professional and ex-tour player. And together with physical therapist Dr. Sean Joyce, welcome to Pivot the Path. G'day golfers and welcome. We had a bit of a balmy 31 degrees. SJ, good morning.
Yeah,
how are you?
Good morning. First snow in New York City, I think 2 years, 700 days or something like that.
How many inches do we have out there right now? Not much, right?
In the city, not much. An inch max, probably.
So we drove down. Drive was a bit dodgy, to be honest, but that's okay. Got here in the end. People driving in snow. I mean, I'm an Aussie, so I haven't had but I've been here, 17 years?
Yeah.
People are crazy.
Yeah, it really weeds out the good from the bad drivers.
Yeah.
I had the same thing when I went to school in Kentucky. If there was even, a dusting on the forecast, people go clear out the milk, clear out the bread at the grocery, and they just stay in.
Kentucky gets snow?
Rarely.
And
so they just shut it down.
Yeah, solid. How's your week?
Good.
Good
week. Busy. Everyone's, gearing up for the warmer weather around here to play better golf.
Yeah, we've noticed. And this week, exploded. You just said to me about 10 minutes ago, I wanted to hit some balls yesterday, but the bastards were in here practicing.
It's a good problem to have for us. But
good problem to have, absolutely.
Yeah, not good for my game, but for swing good.
News from the fairways. What have we got this week? We had Grayson Murray, first time winner in 7 years.
Yeah, playoff victory.
Well, since his last win, rather.
Yeah, which you always love when it goes to a playoff.
I love a decent playoff. And what we try to do, as we all know now, is that this is our spin on things. And I thought the playoff, Grayson was just phenomenal. Again, just the same mental guy.
Yeah.
That birdie
you can't
he
tell
made.
the difference because surely he's got to be nervous as can be.
First win in 7 years. I mean, Grayson Murray, he was so calm and calculated. That up and down he got on 18 to make the playoff. The guy was so crucial and so clutch and so calm. And obviously, Keegan Bradley's a local guy from Long Island.
Yeah.
I don't know Keegan. Never played with him, but he's very jittery. I mean, he's walking back and forward.
It seems to probably, as the years have gone on, get a little bit worse, I'd say.
It seems to be a little neurotic.
Like Billy Horschel has a bit of that, especially with putts. A little bit of that kind of shuffling going on, but I don't know.
I mean, look, he's far better than we are. He's exempt. He's a major winner, but he's so manic into the ball.
Yeah.
You got to think under pressure.
His
gears are turning.
Yeah.
So good on Mr. Murray. I was a little bit surprised the commentator, first thing he said was alcoholism and depression, but I guess they're getting it out there. And I think that we all battle with it in some form in our families. Everyone has it, and mostly. And good on the guy. Like, what a legend story.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to imagine 7 years between wins.
That's huge.
There's been some ups and downs in that time, and I think everyone knows golf is kind of an up and down sport in a way where you would know better than anyone actually playing on tour. People
7
find their
years
way out
a win.
or never do. Yeah,
that's huge. I mean, that's
pretty cool.
That'd be like you having years without treating anyone successfully. Just to wake up every day and go, this is my week. This is my week.
Yeah.
So really well done, Grayson. We don't know you, mate, but absolutely kudos to you. You've battled your demons, and you had your lovely bride there, and they seem to be a very tight unit. And it was just a great story. As a battler out there myself, I just love the battler stories.
Yeah.
Really
so for
cool.
you, when you were playing, did you have any major, high and low points or a slump, as they would say?
Well, I didn't have a lot of PGA wins. So, you know what? Because of my knees, I was just so thankful to be out there, to be honest. I mean, I'd been to some dark places with my legs and wheelchairs. And so I just loved it. Yeah. I mean, it was a challenge. Awesome. I wouldn't say that looking back, I would have loved some more wins, but I don't think I had the tools in the tool bag to give me those.
Interesting.
So in super young years, obviously played some sport, but then the adolescent I didn't. So I didn't have that experience to draw back on, which, you know, is what it is.
Yeah. It's tough if you're learning as you go, because anytime you see, you know, guys win, if they've done it before, no matter how long it's been, they always talk about, oh, I've been there before. I knew I could do it.
Yeah, I mean,
but
he's
breaking through, I imagine, is a really hard thing.
He's
But
30.
After 7 years,
That's
like
insane.
doing it again for the first time.
So he's won when he's 23. That
Wow.
says to me that he's a phenomenal golfer.
Yeah.
PGA Tour win at 23. That's insane.
Yeah.
So obviously the kid can play golf, and now he's 30. He's battled his demons and come out the other side.
Pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
good on you, mate. Hope you continue, and maybe your majors in your way. That the difference between Grayson and Keegan, it's in those two wedge shots, the actual tone and the way they carried themselves into it. Grayson was just boom, all business, hit it to 4 feet, low ball flight.
Yeah.
And Keegan had his back and forth and like he's boxing almost. And it was just, I think he hit it to about 30 feet, which he could put 100 balls down there the next day and he'd hit it to 2 feet all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think Mr. Bradley, just his team have to just quiet that noise a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, it's a big call. We're sitting in a nice
Yeah.
office
Right.
Monday quarterbacking, but he certainly is extremely manic in his pre-shot routine.
Yeah.
which
It's
I
just
think,
like a lot of clutter mentally.
yeah,
going
he's
on.
just got to quieten
Yeah.
that down a little bit. And then the other interesting thing that the beautiful boss producer here mentioned to us was the Swedish study that came out this week that golfers who walk reduce their death rate by about 40%. So we are on the money
Yeah.
with our walking golf.
We're onto
SJ.
something. Yeah. Important distinction. It's not just all golfers, but those who walk.
Yes, one would presume the cart who have their 6 vodkas
Yeah.
death rate maybe not comes down.
Yeah. Probably not.
But that was from about 300,000 study.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. That and it also said the better the golfer, the lower the death rate. I thought, which was interesting.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I mean, also too, depending on, you know, what course you're playing, it can actually be considered proper exercise. You know?
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of hills up in the Westchester and
Yeah, when we were at Sleepy, I mean, there's some
Sleepy.
big hills we're
Yeah.
walking, and thankfully someone was carrying our bags. But
yeah, I haven't been brought up with that, so that's always a luxury for me. But it's a little full on.
yeah, for
What
sure.
do you think about caddies? I'm a bit of a hoof your own bag guy.
I like to as well.
Yeah.
I always feel bad in a sense. And right now, well, thankfully this has just changed, but I have a particularly heavy bag.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, poor guy.
Oh
on
yeah,
these big
SJ had
hills.
this. I'm like, dude, what is that bag? So we got you a nice lightweight sling bag.
Yeah. Now we're good to go. I'll feel less guilt. But the other thing with the decreased death rate and all of that, would you argue as well that you think golfers also shoot lower scores if they walk as compared to those in carts?
No, I'm gonna disagree there a little bit because I think that's coming from my point of view of golf pros.
Yeah,
the amount of times, and again, because I hadn't played a lot of golf, I wanted to walk, but all my mates played in carts.
Okay.
And the amount of times I played with guys like Bowditch or Chuden, shout out Chudes, they would play in a golf cart in 2 hours and shoot 8 under.
Okay.
So I think in a golf pro, because the cart quickens them up, they think less and they react more.
And just a bit of a rhythm.
Okay. Even though when they're playing on tour, you like I used to play with guys who would play in 2 hours all day long.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's speed golf. But then when you're playing a golf tournament, it's 4 hours, 15.
A little different.
And so I was always a bit of a control freak that, well, if I'm going to play in 4.5 hours, 4 hours 15, I should practice in 4 hours 15.
Yeah.
And all my mates played in golf carts. And so it was more, let's get more holes in a short amount of time.
Okay, yeah.
So, but if for the average Joe, I don't know. Great question. We should look at that. Don't know.
Just a thought.
I would strongly recommend that you walk just for your lower back
Yeah.
and for your pelvis and hips.
Yep. Stay warm.
Yeah, stay warm. And then what we also loved this week was shout out to the Buffalo Bills Mafia, which is what you and I are trying to build in here. We're trying to build a community around improvement, and that Bills Mafia.
And we're gonna have to get some picnic tables in here for them to smash. And then we'll have it.
They must have cleared, how many seats are we talking? 100,000? 80,000?
Yeah.
In minus
humongous.
20 degrees. I mean, it was -2 today, 30 degrees Fs.
Did you see they put a travel ban on around Buffalo where they didn't want people leaving their house and getting in trouble unless you were going to the stadium to clear it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
an exception.
Awesome.
So.
What's the quarterback's name? Josh Allen?
Josh Allen, yeah.
So that touchdown he scored where he's just got the whole hands up, I'm like, that guy's king. That was or 52 yards, I think, from memory. Yeah. So we got a soft spot for the Bills. I think last time they've never won. They've never won a
I don't think
NFL
so.
Super Bowl. So that's a bit of a Cinderella story. We're obviously a big Taylor Swizzle fan. We got 3 daughters and I think she's awesome. And poor old Kelsey from the Phillies got kicked out. So we were kind of hoping it was going to be a Kelsey final.
Oh, interesting.
For a bit of, Taylor Swift.
Yeah, of course.
Swift, memorabilia, but so Kelsey number big brother's out.
Yep.
They got demolished.
Yeah, I didn't catch that game.
Oh, I got the little half.
Like it did not go well.
Yeah, it didn't go well. So that's always interesting, and that leads us to what we wanted to talk about today. So SJ and I were watching the tour last week, and they snapshotted to Will Zalatoris getting an adjustment in 2022 when he won that PGA Tour event.
Yeah.
And you said, "Oh my God, that's horrific! Getting an adjustment on a fairway." And I've my L3, L4's got permanent disc degeneration, and I played on tour, unfortunately popping a lot of Advil because I didn't know how to manage my back pain, and nearly at 50, my back pain's almost 0. So it really affects. We don't know what the number is of golfers, but lower back pain has to affect a good majority of golfers and just the population generally.
Yeah, I mean, in here, the number one complaint or issue we see with people in terms of pain playing golf is lower back, I'd say, hands down. A lot of people are like, oh, it's a golfer's elbow. And it's like, that was just a term that was coined. You don't see that kind of stuff that often, actually. It's all kind of lower back is really where a lot of the problems lie.
Will's playing this week. I think he's off at, you said, 1:00-ish on Thursday.
Yeah, he's back in on Thursday.
And he played the Hero, but that's a bit of a joke tournament. 16 guys, 17 guys.
Yeah.
So this is his first tournament since spinal surgery. So what we thought we'd love to do is just explain a little bit about how the lower back and pelvis function, SJ's job, and explain, hopefully Will plays well. We'd love to see him play well.
Great to see him come back and stay healthy.
Explain a little bit.
He was playing unbelievable golf when he had the injury.
Yeah, so he finally
won, and he was so close so many times.
Came runner-up in 3 majors.
Yep.
And we just wanted to talk a little bit about his technique. Obviously, he's a TPI Titleist guy. I think we certainly have discussed it a little bit this morning, just as we were opening. And as we're setting all this up, we'd love to get our hands on some of these PGA Tour guys. We think we approach it a little differently. But so why don't we start with what he had done? Maybe we start with a little bit of golf technique.
Yeah.
And then leads to movement. So
yeah, sure.
In Will, there's 3 things that basically affect ball flight, and it's face, path, and low point, and speed obviously affects distance. So face and path, we've talked to death. Low point is basically for a right-handed golfer, your lead shoulder, your left shoulder, right at the left shoulder joint is basically the lowest point the club travels. And Will has a tendency to hang back and really hit up on driver. He bombs it at 330, 340
I think he was
young kid
in the top 15 longest before getting hurt on tour.
Insane.
Driving average.
And with his irons, he basically hangs back, spins his torso, and holds the face off a little. So his side bend, so I'm obviously on camera here, he tilts to his right-hand side. For a right-handed golfer, he's basically wedging his right elbow into his right lower rib cage through impact. And that's an absolute recipe for disaster physiologically. So I think his golf swing ball flight, again, he hangs back. So his point of tangency is always going to be behind a little more. My philosophy of teaching is getting someone to cover the ball. Will hangs back a bit. And when you hang back, the face points a little left. But then he holds it off, which he probably hits it pretty straight a lot of the time. But the downside is his lower back.
Yeah. So and when you say point of tangency, what do you mean by that?
So a club face, if I may talk in a right-handed golfer, a club face for most golfers, unless you're trying to do a crazy shot, even if you're coming outside in a little bit, the club face will have a tendency to face right on the way down. So it's got a declining angle, an angle that's moving down to the ground, the club face, and the face is pointing a little right. Now, the club will hit the ground where your sternum is. So I teach into a vest. I teach teaching with a vest here. So where my zipper is, my chin, my nose, my sternum is verbatim pretty well where the club hits the ground first.
Okay, yep.
And then the club actually, believe it or not, continues to work downwards on a downward angle.
So a divot comes from, right?
Divot comes after the ball if your sternum's ahead of the ball. And then at the left shoulder, the club stops moving right and down. And at the left shoulder for a right-handed golfer, the club starts moving up and to the left. So the tangency of the circle, down and right, up and left, is your lead shoulder. Will hangs back as a trend, not always, but I've watched a lot of video over him the last couple of years. He's hanging back, which is going to trend the face to move left. And then he doesn't release his hands too much. So the face and path are going to be pretty straight. He's going to hit it straight a lot.
Yeah. But that issue is that compression.
That compression. So over to you, boss. Why is that detrimental? Because the ball flight in theory works.
Yeah.
His driver, he's hitting up more than I like. I like hitting down on my driver, but the guys who bomb it the longest certainly hit up 2 or 3 degrees. Yeah. So he's definitely hitting up, holding his face open. Yeah. But that side bend, and a lot of golfers in here, we see it. So what's going on there?
So the issue is not necessarily the result of the ball flight. And like we said, he was playing some unbelievable golf leading up to this injury. It's more just that compression on the discs in the lower back. So with that amount of side bend, and if anyone listening has seen Will Zalatoris' swing, especially in slow motion, I mean, he's got some crazy movement going on with how far back he is, right? Like you said, that side bend, and then a big, strong push off of that back leg. Yeah. So when you think of, his body, lumbar discs there, right in the middle, he's getting this huge push from the back leg upwards, and then his upper body on top of that has got that side bend and hang back. So compression down. The thing right in the middle of those two compressive forces is,
so do we want, so if we always use our little spine here, and these little red dots, which we're showing on YouTube, is showing how the disc. So what is a disc? I think most people don't know what a disc is.
Yeah, I think, when people talk about the spine and what's going on, there's some confusion sometimes.
Yeah, why don't we clean up
So the discs are what's in between your bones. So you have your vertebrae, the bones, right? 25 of them up your spine.
And the lumbar facet joints are pretty big compared to the other parts of the spine.
Yeah, and a different orientation too, so which dictates how they should or shouldn't move. But the disc is in between. So it's in there to, absorb compressive
like a
forces.
Shock absorber.
So the bones aren't moving on top of bones. But of course, depending on how your spine moves, it's going to put pressure in certain parts of the disc or relieve pressure. And this lower back area is where, typically you see those big injuries.
Why is that?
Well, part of it is just, like we said, the set orientation and how the spine should move. So your lumbar spine doesn't do a lot of rotation. Yeah. It's not designed for it. It's more of a bit of flex and extend, but a lot of stability. Big, robust bones. They're bigger than the rest. It's not meant to be a center of rotation.
That's what we've got hips for.
Yes, exactly. But the issue is when hips down here, lower body center of rotation, as I often refer to it, and then your thoracic spine, the upper center of rotation. When one of those things is not moving, oftentimes your body will draw from the lower back to make up for that. But sometimes, and we see this all the time, the upper and lower center of rotation are both restricted. And so the lower back is doing its original job of stabilizing, but then also it's trying to rotate and make up for what's not happening in the other areas.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Will Zalatoris, which is similar to JT. And as you said, I think Will doesn't have a big butt, so therefore his ability to stabilize and separate probably diminishes. I'll be working on his backside, getting some strength through there. But with Will and JT, as you describe absolutely bloody perfectly, they push off that back leg. And if you notice, Will gets right up on his toes. My gut feeling is because he doesn't posteriorly tilt. Now, a posterior tilt is when the pelvis, like you said with last week with the bucket of water, tucks underneath through impact. And because Will, I think, lacks some posterior tilt, and as he's actually at the top of his golf swing, his arch in his lower back, his first move is to arch his lower back. And so if you look at Will's lower back, lumbar spine at the top of the golf swing, it's got a slight curve, and then his first move is this big anterior tilt arch of his lower back. It's almost impossible for him to then go into posterior tilt. He does, he posteriorly tilts well, but it's a lot of work. Yeah. It's a lot of work. And then as he pushes up into his toes, I've noticed that his left foot starts square and then really rotates up and open, which suggests that his left hip is crazy tight because his left-footed address is pretty square, and then through impact it splays open just because of the force that he's creating. So I'm not sure why his coach doesn't open his left foot a little more.
That's interesting to think. But like you mentioned, with that really big anterior tilt in terms of expansion in the spine, and then going into the posterior tilt, that's something I see all the time. I think is a big influence on these lumbar disc injuries is when you live in that anterior tilt and a lot of spinal extension. So if you think of someone who has a really, really arched back, if you live that way, it puts a lot of compressive force on the posterior aspect of the disc.
Posterior being the backside.
The backside, yeah.
Right.
So as you're going through in, daily life, or even when you're working out, playing golf, you're putting a lot of compression on that posterior disc. It starts to degenerate a bit.
What we see in Will is that he starts in a pretty neutral posture. Here's his backswing. Now, his first move is to go into this crazy anterior tilt.
This is all that posterior compression.
That's crazy. And then he's got to tuck under. But you can imagine if he's in a pretty neutral lower back spine, gets to the top of his swing, and then starts posteriorly tilting, it's a lot easier. But he's in neutral pretty well at address. He has his backswing, and then he goes into this crazy anterior tilt. And then he's generating. I mean, his club speed for a young kid is insane.
Yeah.
And then he's got to go from this arch to tuck.
Yeah, so he really goes both ends of the spectrum.
Which gets back to what you were talking about last week about you should live somewhere in the middle of your spine.
Yeah, and when you go through something like a golf swing, I mean, you've really got to coil up and create a big turn. So you should be going through, full range of motion in some aspects of it. But where some of the problem lies is like where I was just talking about previously with when you live in that extended state and you're compressing that posterior disc a lot, it starts to break down and get a little bit weaker. And then,
so what does that mean? What do you mean breakdown? So let's talk about when you bulge a disc, what actually, I think people actually think their bone spurs out.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. So
yeah.
How about we just talk super basic macro?
Yeah,
what do you do when you
can think of
bulge
the
a disc
as like, more, kind of like a gelatinous jelly type structure. So it
shock
compresses,
absorber.
bends, shock absorbs. Yes.
Okay.
So when you actually herniate a disc, you break the integrity of that, disc itself looking like the shape of a disc, and it starts to shoot and push out in some direction. Now it can go any of the ways, it's a circular thing, but
Sure.
where the big issues and the nerve pain comes from is that posterior herniation where it pushes into the nerve root.
So if we turn side on for the camera, Will's like this at impact. So one could imagine that his disc is being...
This has a herniation right here. If you see that red dot, that's kind of it. But like I was saying with that posterior, all that extension, when you live there and it breaks down the back of it, the actual injuries most of the time for the herniations that cause that radiating pain and all of that come from an actual flexion movement. So it's when you have that weakness of the disc in the back, and then you do something under load or very quickly where you flex forward, it shoots the pressure into that posterior disc, and then it can herniate outwards.
So something as simple as Will can hit a drive 340 yards, go to tie his shoelaces, and it's the tying of the shoelaces that can be the trigger.
Yes, but the actual tying of the shoelaces isn't the real issue. It's that previous, and it can happen for a long time, that posterior disc is getting, compressed and eventually weaker to where it's vulnerable for tying your shoe. Or the big one I get is people changing their sheets on their bed.
Interesting.
That awkward bend forward and boom,
that makes sense.
Disc. And they say, how is my back so weak or fragile? And you're like, it's actually not. It's been getting hammered for years, and it finally just last straw breaks.
So this is fascinating. This is completely unscripted. So I remember, I had lower back degeneration. I played on tour with my lower back with disc bulge weekly. Mm-hmm. One of the worst incidents I had, I was living at Sunshine Beach, which for anyone who ever gets the chance, go to Sunshine Beach.
Sounds lovely.
Greatest postcode on the face of the earth. It's in Noosa, which is just north of the Gold Coast. Shout out to my sister in the Goldie. And Noosa is just exquisite. So I could look out my bedroom window and I'd be surfing in about 26 seconds. It was insane. I remember coming home and it was a good 6 to 7 foot. So we're talking 10-foot face. And I must have surfed that thing for about 2.5 hours before I'd go hit balls for 7 or 8 hours. And then I remember sitting in the couch and just as you said, changing the sheets, and our couch was horrible. So I was really arched as I sat there. And when I went to get the remote control, my lower back spasmed. And I thought to myself, I'm at 25, 6, 7, whatever, however old I was. I've just surfed 3 hours in huge waves, and I do my back getting on my remote control. And I never understood. And this was one of the reasons I built Swing, was when I went to the spinal surgeon back in Australia, he never explained it. And so I never understood it. And so what I love about what we're doing here is, and certainly today with the podcast, this is going to be a little technical, but it's really important because most people, 40% of the population have lower back pain. I don't know what the figure is.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of research around this, and sometimes they can be taken out of context. But kind of in general right now, there's some research saying that between the ages of 30 and 50, about 30 people have some sort of disc degeneration
out of 100
disorder. Just 30%.
Oh, 30%. Yeah.
So, that's a significant
that's a lot
piece
of people
of the population walking around. That's the majority of the people we've seen here in that kind of 30 to 50 age range. And some people, may have that disc degeneration, something going on, have no pain. There's also a big piece of people who have issues that if you MRI'd it, you can see, oh, this is going on, but then they have no pain going on. So in that 30% that have the disc degeneration, it's a spectrum, right? So some people have structural issues in their spine, feel no pain, would never think twice about it. And other people have no issues, from an objective standpoint.
And Will appears to be very anteriorly tilted, lots of curve.
Yeah. So some people actually have issues or don't have structural issues, but then they feel tons of pain.
Sure.
So it's all eventually comes down to how you move, how you feel, and what you're using to generate your motion. Because the unfortunate thing is, if you get an injury and you get an MRI and it says, okay, you have disc issues, they never go back and check if it's still there once you've gone through maybe rehab or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So what did Will have done?
So he had a microdiscectomy, which is they go in and clean up and take out the pieces of the disc that were herniated and pushing into his nerve.
So we've got bone, disc, bone. So the disc, the fluid sac gets pushed out, and they just lop it off.
And they just clean up the parts. So then there's no
give
longer anything pushing into his nerve
on the nerve, right? So that whole, and the reason we brought this up was because the Golf Channel and PGA Tour, showed him getting adjusted on a golf course. Whilst he won that 2022 St. Jude, one should never get adjusted during a sport where you're explosive. It's the months previously that you should change. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Chiropractors versus physical therapists, that's always a long-winded conversation. I know you manipulate where you need to, but would it be correct for a layman, not someone with medical experience, but one could look at a chiropractic approach and say you're not really fixing the problem if only you're adjusting to get the person better in the now? You certainly take a step back and go, well, let's fix the whole problem here.
That's kind of the idea. But of course, I mean, this is, there's a lot of complexity to the debate here. And I think when we were talking about the clip that we had seen with the adjustment on course, we don't really know exactly what they were getting at. It looked like a thoracic one, but we know his issue was in the lumbar spine. So I think just in that point in time, unless they just want to get him through the tournament,
which
at the sacrifice of his body, then there's not much you can do. You can't fix a disc herniation in a split second, of course.
Sure.
So maybe there's a way to give him a little bit of relief where he can get through the actual final round. But as we now haven't seen him play golf for a number of months, it takes a long time to kind of calm down first these disc injuries, whether you have surgery or not, and then rebuild in a way that you're not going to be.
So someone like Will, who had the discectomy, you could actually argue that if you just pump the brakes, the disc may, not always, but the disc may actually return to its original form.
Sometimes it depends on the severity of it. Sometimes they say we got no other option but just to operate. And of course, he's also thinking of probably beyond the context of golf, but he knows one day he won't be playing professional golf. He wants to make sure his life, he can, if he has kids later, pick them up, play with them, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I'm sure there was a lot that went into the decision to go ahead and have surgery. There's kind of debate about whether discs actually heal. But like I was saying, you very rarely get an opportunity to go back and MRI it again after you feel good or have supposedly healed. Sure. So you don't really know a lot of times.
So use pain as a guide. So that's where I know the doctors pushed me very intently into steroids. and to calm my lower back down. But I actually buffered that and said, but I think pain's important for me because it tells me when I'm doing something incorrectly.
Yeah, it gives you feedback.
Gives you feedback.
You know, as we were talking about earlier, you know, this has been a bit more technical today, but to just make it a little bit easier, the big takeaway for a lot of people is if you get your hips moving properly, if you get your thoracic spine moving properly, so the areas where we want all of your rotation or most of it coming from in your swing, then lower back has to do less. Good chance if you do have lower back issues, or even if you don't, it's not going to become an issue because you're rotating where you should and not borrowing from places that's not designed to rotate.
Yeah, I know that I was one of probably the main reason why I built Swing was I was so frustrated with the medical family that they didn't look at me in a macro point. They just looked at my knees or my lumbar spine, L4-5. What they should have done is said, Scott, you have no stability. You are never using your glutes and you're using your lower back to rotate, which is what I see Zalatoris doing. So hopefully his golf pros got him using more hips than lower back. And if you've got issues out there, just make sure you're not getting that crack and then you're back to same old. Yeah. Create a path of understanding of what you need to do, and make sure you do little things often.
Yeah, get to the source of it.
Get to the source.
Will said a couple really interesting things in his interview, which one was he's had to become really aware of how his whole body's connected.
Yeah,
shoulder issue, or like we talked about, that big drop and all of this can affect what's going on in your hips, your lower back, all of that. Then the other thing he mentioned, which I found interesting, was when he talked about his actual injury and where he thought it came from after working with people to fix it, was that it was primarily a sequencing issue. And that his turn and when he pushed off of his back leg was later than most people. So you imagine he's got that big side bend already, and then he has a big push from that back leg.
Yeah, totally.
Then something that's compressed is just getting even more
hammered.
And he's got speed, so we know that compressive force is big.
It'd be really interesting to watch. I know he didn't play great at the Hero, but first tournament back, he's going to be a little ginger. I hope that he's pain-free. He seems like such a great kid. I just hope that he just goes at it hard this week.
I can't wait to see him play. I hope he plays well.
It'd be lovely to see him win, actually.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see if that, huge side bend we're talking about is diminished at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it. I don't watch a lot of PGA Tour guys' videos because unless I'm working with them, there's no real point. We teach math in here, and we teach, understand physiology, understand how physiology relates to math. I'm never going to compare one of my golfers to Rory or Will or to whomever, because until you know how they move, it's a waste of time. We just teach math. If I have to hit a high draw, it's, face less than path. So I hope Will's team is taking a step back, looked at how much his lumbar spine's turning, which it shouldn't be. I would get him to open that left hip. Obviously, we'd test his left hip internal rotation, but opening that left foot will greatly reduce that need for lower back rotation. Hopefully, his team have got him fired up this week. I hope he plays well. 1 o'clock, Will.
Yeah, he'll be out there Thursday. So excited to see how he does. Hopefully, he plays great and stays healthy.
Beauty golfers. Look, thanks for listening to Pivot the Path. And remember, your on-course enjoyment starts with the work you put into your entire game so you can absolutely own your swing. So keep moving, keep swinging. See you next time.
Yeah, stay warm in New York here, and we'll see you next week.
Beautiful. And follow and like us and just pass it on to mates. We're trying to grow this good old community here.
Yeah,
Cheers.
We appreciate the support. Thank you, guys.